Now, in a moment, you're going to hear from one of those New York residents. Joining me first with an update on where things stand in this dysfunctional Congress is Virginia Congressman Randy Forbes and South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy. Guys, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sean. It's great to be with you.
Congressman Gowdy, how much actual pork was in the Senate bill? How much in terms of total dollars?
You mean the bill that we're going to vote on January 15th?
Well,
at least half of it. Not what we did today, but what's coming up is the pork-laden bill, and about half of it is what you described. It's fisheries in Mississippi. I know Sandy was big, but I don't think it hit Alaska, and I'm positive it didn't hit Mississippi. Cars for the Department of Justice, rooftops in the District of Columbia. About half of what Harry Reid calls an emergency is pork.
Well, this is obviously an abuse of power by the Democrats. Why do you think, Congressman, that they did this?
Because they can. Because nobody calls them on it. Because those of us who voted no today, for instance, because we have the unmitigated temerity to ask for an offset, because, frankly, Governor Christie wants to bully and berate and badger people into passing a bill no matter how pork-laden it is. We're $16 trillion in debt, and I don't think it's asking too much that we find an offset, that we find waste, fraud, abuse, duplicative programming, something to pay for this $9 billion that we spent today instead of mortgaging the future of our kids. I don't think that's too much to ask.
I don't think it's too much. First of all, they should have moved quicker than this, as the president promised he would do. And secondly, I don't think the people of the Rockaways and Long Beach and New Jersey and the Jersey Shore and Staten Island, I don't think they deserve to be put in the middle of a political football here, Congressman Forbes. In other words, they're being held up, they're being used and abused in this process because Congress, they're looking to get any spare change that they can get out of the taxpayers, and it's non-Sandy related. It's not fair to the people that are victims here.
Well, Sean, absolutely. And one of the things that I think Trey and I both agree on, and I know you do, is that the number one priority we ought to have here are the needs of the victims, not the needs of these senators. And what we're finding here is the process that they use. They have the same crisis playbook every time. And here's the way it works. Senator Reid, one person in the Senate, lets the clock run down. He keeps his eye on that play clock. And when there's a few seconds left, he calls timeout. He huddles with a few senators, and they ask, what can we get out of this bill? And then they throw that in there and they try to shove it down the throats of the American people. And that's what they tried to do in this particular situation. And, Sean, it's not just the pork we found in there. We found that about 64% of all of this bill couldn't be done not just in 2 days or 2 weeks. It couldn't be done in 2 years. And yet they don't want to even give the American people time to read the bill to make sure we can get those offsets that Trey talked about.
You agree? And I saw the outrage, and Congressman King is a friend of mine, and whoops, my button fell. Congressman King is a friend of mine, and Chris Christie, I understand his outrage. They're looking out for their constituents. I get that. But the reality here, they should be mad at Senate Democrats for using this tragedy to take more money at a time when our country's bankrupt. Do you agree with that analysis?
I think absolutely. I think what we saw is a bunch of people going to podiums, pounding on the podiums. Sometimes they were crying. Sometimes they were acting emotional about this situation. But what they weren't really saying is this. This bill comes down with literally minutes to be able to review the bill. You've got, as Trey mentioned, we've got so much pork that's laden on here when we've already got a $16 trillion debt, and they don't want to even give people time to review the bill and pull this out. I think that's just wrong. I'm glad the Speaker pulled this. We did what we needed to do today. We got the funding we needed for the flood insurance program. We'll come back on the 15th and meet the need of the victims, but not the need of these other senators who've been just too greedy in this whole process.
All right, Congressman, thank you both for what you're doing here. This is really unfair to people that have paid their taxes. This has been done to every other state, and now they're waiting 3 times as long as any other victim. And speaking of which, joining us now is a victim